Okay, we are going to start this meeting right now. Thank you all for coming today. We got a good crew here, it looks like. Wow, I'm impressed, must be the speakers. I see a couple, well, one person I don't recognize. I think he might be a visitor, a guest. He is. Yeah, you have to.
My name is Whitney. I'm a friend of Victor Russell's.
Oh. Very good. Thank you for coming. We need to get him a membership application. And the best thing about this meeting is we start off with a joke of the day. So our program chair is on, I think, unless anybody else has volunteered for a joke. Hearing none. Martin, here it is.
I got this joke in a couple of versions. One was Italian and one was Polish. I couldn't pronounce the Polish guy's names, and I don't want to insult the Italian, so I'll make it an Irish joke. So two Irish hunters, because you can't insult an Irishman. Two Irish hunters got a pilot to fly them into the Canadian wilderness, where they managed to bag two big moose. As they were loading the plane, as the plane had returned, the pilot said the plane can only take the hunters, their gear, and one moose. The hunters objected strongly, saying, "Last year we shot two, and the pilot let us take both of them, and he had a plane exactly like your airplane." Reluctantly, the pilot, not wanting to be outdone by another bush pilot, gave in and everything was loaded. However, even under full power, the little plane couldn't handle the load and went down, crashing in a wooded wilderness. And what happened to the pilot, but somehow the surrounded by the moose, clothing and sleeping bags, Pat and Mike survived the crash. After climbing out of the wreckage, Mike asks, "Is there any idea where we are?" And Pat says, "I think we're pretty close to where we crashed last year."
Okay. We always have the speaker pick for our game of skill. Don't look, you're looking. And mine's on the other side. We have 255. 255. No. You are the legitimate winner of this game of skill. It's been drawn twice. There's your number. What would you like to do with that handful of winnings there?
I would like to donate it to this fine organization.
Thank you very much. We will put that to great use. So now it's time to turn this over to the program chair of this month. So, Martin, here you go.
First, I'd like to thank Bill for being here, and along with his sisters, cousins, and aunts. We're very lucky to have Bill. Besides just fortunate, very lucky, because he's a highly sought-after speaker at luncheons like this, evening events, wakes, weddings. Mr. Lloyd is his program manager. I had to apply last year to get him to get a spot for us here. So, thank you, Bill. Wait, no, it's not over yet. It's hard to believe it's going to get better, Bill. Bill, known also as Bill Noodle Leary, because of his fabulous pasta dishes that he's famous for, has spoken to us before, usually on engineering subjects. He was the Navy's no-cut-oy dry dock specialist. In the fleet, he was known as Noodle, the little Dutch boy, because if a dry dock sprung a leak, the call would go out, "Get Noodle," and Noodle would be the one that figuratively put his finger in the dike. But today, Noodle is going to take us to the South Seas in the wake of Conrad and Jack London. Please welcome Bill Noodle Leary and Tales of the South Pacific.
Thank you, Mac. So I had the pleasure of speaking to this group about 3 years ago. I think it was. You were downstairs at the time. I had just returned from a trip to the South Pacific in 2011, right after I retired from the Navy. 2012 and 13, I sat around and got antsy, and so last year we took off and did another cruise to the South Pacific. This time I've got some video in there, so I hope it's a little bit more realistic for you. And it's about half an hour long, and these are always more fun when they're interactive. So if anybody has any questions, comments, or corrections, please feel free to jump in at any time. Next slide. So I'd sailed to the South Pacific on 4 previous occasions, and somehow managed to miss 2 of the real gems, Vava'v and the Austral Island group. So this trip was about getting to see those, probably my last South Pacific cruise. On the way down, we decided to stop in Christmas Island in the Line Islands and Suwarrow in the Northern Cook Islands to rest. And then on the way home, Tahiti's along the way, so you always want to stop there as well. We left in April and got back in November. It's about a 7-month cruise, and the whole idea is to stay out of the South Pacific during their typhoon season. We've all heard about what happened recently in Vanuatu. You do not want to be down there during hurricane season because there's nowhere to hide. So we left in April when the hurricane season ends, and we got out before 1st of November. Next slide. So my wife Lori loves to sail, but she gets seasick, so she can't go along with me. So I always sail with pals, and Lori kisses me goodbye at the Kaneohe Yacht Club dock, and then she rushes up to the Makapu lookout to watch us. She waves a big American flag, and we can see it from the boat, and we talk on the cell phone one last time. So here she is. She took this photo of Mokupea, our 35-foot sailboat, as my pal Rocky and I headed south at the end of April last year.
Lori heads down to the Club Gilpin.
Yeah. Lori then takes off and finds it. She knows she has a month to find a new boyfriend before she has to come down. Next slide. Took about 7 days to get to Christmas. There wasn't much to do there. We rested for a couple of days and then took off for Suwarrow, our next point of call. But just south of Christmas Island is the equator. We had a polywog, someone who had never been across the equator under sail before. So King Neptune came aboard to properly initiate poor Rocky, and here we see Neptune coming up from down below just after we crossed the equator. Next slide. Here's a video I put together of our first leg of the trip. Here we are aboard the mighty Mokupea, zipping along about 300 miles north of Christmas Island. Trades have finally filled in after almost a week of pretty much drifting along in ideal conditions. Wind is down a little bit now, but it was up earlier. But we're broad reaching along, just comfortable as can be. Got 3 reefs in the main and a very rolled up jib here, but we're off the wind and comfortable, doing over 7 knots. Just sailing along here in the North Pacific. This is pretty typical conditions. Got a few birds, caught a fish yesterday. Autopilot here steering the boat, doing a great job. Got the wind generator up there generating power along with our solar panels, so we haven't had to run the engine for power at all. Have our backup self-steering vane there that we haven't had to use. Here's a puff. But just good conditions up here. A little water on deck, but not too bad. North Pacific Ocean. Here we are aboard the mighty Mokupea, sailing along here, about 16 degrees south, just coming up on Suwarrow Atoll. And you can see one of the Motus out there in the distance. There's Anchorage Island right ahead of us.
Double Reef, Maine. We've had a real tough day today. And there's Turtle Island out there. And very tough day with squalls and wind up, wind down. We drifted around for an hour, trying desperately to get in here to Suwarrow before it's dark tonight. And we'll get there about 4 o'clock, looks like. It's about 3:30 now. So you can see it's kind of rough out here. We've had some big seas, confused seas, but all's well that ends well. Suwarrow Atoll. Just anchored in Suwarrow Atoll. I don't know if you can see it. There's 4 sharks right behind us here. There's another one. As soon as we anchored, the sharks were right around the boat. So the thought is, look at them all. 3 or 4 foot long, black tips. It's deja vu all over again, just like last time I was here. So I'm thinking maybe we're not going to want to do a heck of a lot of swimming. Look at these guys. Look at them coming in here. Look at all those. Look at them. Look at them. Holy schmoly. Look at those guys. Look at that. Wow. So we just anchored here, Suwarrow Atoll. Here's Anchorage Island. Just dropped the hook. Got 2 other cruising boats. Got a catamaran and looks like a Jeanneau over there, or a Hunter. I don't know what the hell it is. So here we are, Suwarrow Atoll. Just about 4:15 in the afternoon. We made it just in time. We're going to anchor down in a good spot, lots of sand, and there's a shallow spot back here, but I think it's deep enough. I don't intend to go there. And I'm very happy. We're happy, aren't we, Rocky?
Oh, that's fantastic.
And now? And our sharks are happy. And now it's Miller time.
So I had been to Suwarrow Atoll 28 years earlier on a previous cruise. We caught a fish coming in the pass, and I cleaned it, and I threw the carcass over the side, and the carcass hit the water, and within 2 seconds there were 4 sharks fighting over it. So I've never seen an atoll with more, or an island with more sharks than Suwarrow. This is Suwarrow Atoll from the air, pretty typical, about 7 miles across the lagoon, a bunch of motus, small islands on the fringing reef, and this was our destination, Anchorage Island, just inside the pass there. Suwarrow is famous for its hermit, next slide please, who lived there off and on for 25 years in the middle of the last century, a guy named Tom Neal. He wrote a book about his adventures called An Island to Oneself. And all the yachtsmen who go to Suwarrow have read his book. And when I went there 28 years ago, his house, he had been dead for almost 10 years, his house had been kept like a shrine. And the yachtsmen who visited would clean his house. And when I anchored there, we were the only boat there. The path up to his house had been cleaned, probably by a visiting yacht that had left a week earlier or so. We walked up the path and up to his house and knocked on the door because it just seemed like someone was there. But no one was there. We went inside. His bed was made. His machete with his name carved in the handle was hanging over his bed. It was really just a chicken skin stuff. Unfortunately, in the last 30 years, the Cook Islands government has discovered that yachts are going there and they wanted money, so now they send caretakers out there during the cruising season who have destroyed his house and that kind of thing. But this bust and memorial to Tom Neal is still there. It's a beautiful island, about the size of Coconut Island in Kaneohe Bay, a quarter-mile long and a couple hundred yards wide with a beautiful white sand beach. It's just a lovely spot. Here's my buddy Rocky on the beach there at Suwarrow with another yacht dinghy coming in to land. Next slide. After a couple days at Suwarrow, we took off for Niuatoputapu, the Northern Cook Islands, and it was about 700 miles to the west. Should have been straight downwind. It should have been the easiest passage of our voyage, but it was on that trip that we had our only 2 equipment issues of the trip. I had replaced, this is looking down on my battery bank, I had replaced my batteries right before I left just to be sure, and it turns out one of my 2 deep cycle batteries was bad. And it was hooked up in parallel. A bad battery hooked up in parallel with a good battery can be difficult to diagnose what the problem is, and it took me a while to figure it out. But we did have power issues. My refrigerator and autopilot were tripping out on low voltage, and I thought at first it was a connection, but it took me a while to figure out that it was bad batteries. Then once we arrived at Niuatoputapu, I went up to the top of the mast to change a light bulb and found that the top of my headstay was stranded. There were 4 broken strands out of the 19 wires.
very dangerous situation, so we limped the next 200 miles down to Vava'v, Tonga. Fortunately, Lori was flying down a week later, so I could call her on the sat phone and she could bring down replacement parts. So though it was a problem, it wasn't catastrophic, and we managed to fix it. Here we are in Vava'v, Tonga after we took the old headstay down and before we put the new one up. This is a shot of Vava'v, Tonga, just to give you an idea of what it's like. This is kilometers. It's about 10 miles by 10 miles, so 100 square miles, 60 islands, most of them uninhabited. They all have beautiful white sand beaches. The people there are honest and friendly. It's just a lovely spot for cruisers, and we spent about 2.5 months there.
Do they speak English?
They do. They all speak English, so I think they all learn it in school. Here's Rocky with a couple of pals that he made on Lapi Island, one of the outer islands on the group. Next slide. The geology of the island is all uplifted coral, so there's no basalt. It's a lot like Palau. A lot of caves, a lot of undercut islands. This is a shot from inside Mariner's Cave. We took the dinghy in there, took a picture of the boat that's just outside the cave, and it's over 200 feet deep where the boat is right there. Here we are replacing the headstay at one of the few docks there in Niuatoputapu, the main port of Vava'v. I like this photo. It reminds me of the planting of the flag on Mount Suribachi in Iwo Jima. But this is Raymond. He's the manager of the moorings charter boat fleet there, and he let us come alongside his dock on a slow Saturday, and he's helping us put the final pin in on the new headstay. This is Mount Talau, which is the highest point in Vava'v at 425 feet. Rocky flew out after about 2 weeks down there. Lori and I had the next month and a half to just relax and explore Vava'v, and here's just a couple of shots of showing you the beaches and what the islands look like down there. This is the island of Kunutu, one of our favorite anchorages, and Lori's burning the garbage there. There's no municipal garbage collection, so they encourage you to burn your garbage to get rid of it. Right next to Kunutu is another island that had a very large sinkhole, so there we are down exploring that sinkhole. Fishing was pretty bad for most of the cruisers there, but I had good lures from some good fishermen here in Hawaii, and we managed to catch 2 of these Spanish mackerel. Best eating fish I've ever had. This is one of our favorite anchorages. This is Port Morel in Vava'v. And this is a view from the Bounty Bar, one of our favorite hangouts in the main town of Niuatoputapu. This is the cruising fleet and anchor there off the town. As you can see, there's a small boat harbor here for dinghies, but no docks to tie your boat up to. It's very deep anchorages, so everyone has to anchor along the edge. It's over 200 feet deep out there in the middle of the harbor. This is the view from Mount Talau looking back towards the main town there of Niuatoputapu, and you can see off in the distance all these bays and islands and fjords, and we explored them all. It was just wonderful, wonderful cruising. It was interesting that we caught the first of our 2 Spanish mackerel right here in the throat of this channel, and this is over 5 miles from the open ocean off here to the right. So it would be kind of like catching an ono off the sandbar in Kaneohe Bay. Very, very unusual. This is Nuku Island. This is reportedly the King of Tonga's favorite island, right there. We went to a couple Tongan feasts where they cook a pig over a spit. This is the island of Vava'v, and this belongs to this guy David here and his family. And here is David playing the guitar, and his kids are singing to us. We knew there was something happening that day because we woke up that morning and we heard him slaughtering the pig. It was not a pleasant sound. And here's that little piglet being roasted over the spit. Here's just a screenshot of my navigation software on my computer. In the red here you can see our track coming down from Hawaii. We came from Christmas Island down to Suwarrow, and then off to the west to Niuatoputapu in the northern Tongan group, and then down to Vava'v. Our destination after that was going to be Raivavae in the Austral Islands, which is 1,500 miles to the southeast, and this is going to present a lot of challenges because just like up here in Hawaii where our trade winds come from the northeast, down there they come from the southeast. So it should have been straight into the wind to get to Raivavae. But we know that the ancient Polynesians figured it out that during the winter months, about once a week, you get a day or so of winds out of the west. And what they would do is they would wait for that wind to shift out of the west and then jump on it, ride it to the east as far as they could. And when the wind shifted back around out of the east, they'd find a place to hole up and wait a week for the next westerly pulse to come through. And that's how they would work their way to the east. We know now that those westerly winds are caused by low pressure areas that come rolling off the Australian continent. And during the summer months, they're too far south to have an effect in the tropics. But during the winter months, they move north and they affect the tropics. It's just like what happens here during the winter. So our plan was to do just like the Polynesians did. We were going to island hop to the east, and we had penciled in hiding places in Beveridge Reef, Niuatoputapu, and the Cook Islands. And then if we could make it to Raivavae, great. And if we couldn't, we'd bail out and head for French Polynesia or Bora Bora. Well, these are all shoals and islands, mostly shoals, just shallow spots here.
There's like contour lines, like a contour map.
Those are just shallow. That's just the topography of the bottom. Well, it's shallow, but that's like 2,000 meters or something, so it's not that shallow. The real shallow ones are in blue. So those are either less than 100 meters or something like that. Not many islands out here. So that was our plan. A friend of mine flew down to join me. We put Lori on the airplane, and we waited for a low-pressure area to come. And this video here shows what happens next. This is what the freeway looks like heading east down here in the Southern Ocean here, or south part of the tropics. Pretty windy right now, mid-20s, no, mid to high 20s. It was up near 30 earlier. Sea is very confused. That's the real problem here. So we're zipping along. This is a southwest breeze, very cold. Southwesterly, and we're heading easterly. You can see we've got a triple reef main, and there's not much of a jib up at all. And we're still zipping along at 6.5, 7 knots, but it's very windy, and like I said, confused sea is the issue. And it's cold, real cold. You can see two sweatshirts on, long underwear, bunny slippers. It's not real pleasant, but we're getting through it, and we're getting east. Here we are at 24 degrees south, heading due east with a westerly wind. We are on the north end of a low pressure area that's passing by to the south of us, and it's giving us this very unusual westerly wind, which is allowing us to streak towards Raivavae. You can see we're running wing and wing, double reefed main and partially reefed jib. It helps the autopilot to steer. We're just zipping along here at a little better than 7 knots. Look at that heading 095. Can't beat it. Heading right for our destination. This is just what the doctor ordered. And a little rocky rolly here. But this is, nobody could ask for anything more, and it looks like we may have this condition, or good condition similar to this, all the way into Raivavae. It's Mr. Dyer, who just cooked us an outstanding Simon lunch. Simon I. And we are having the voyage of our lives here. Day 9?
Thursday.
I think it's day 9. 28th, and look what just came for a visit. Oh my goodness. Here's the ahi that the boys caught today, what's left of it, just for perspective on how big it is. Here we are, sunrise, August 30th, on the approach to Raivavae. Look at those beautiful peaks. We had to hove to overnight, wait to come in here, but we're working our way in here just at sunrise. We'll be going to the channel here in half an hour or so. See, we got a little bit of company here. Looks like an inter-island steamer coming on in. We're going to tuck in behind him and follow him right in.
What do you mean exactly by
Sorry? The waves are coming from all different directions. If they're coming from one direction, it's pretty regular. But when they, what happens is the wind somewhere in the ocean will have been blowing from the north for a couple days, and that creates a sea. And we may never see that wind, but those waves will just roll on forever. It sloshes because you have a wave train coming from the north and one coming from the west and one coming from the south, and it just gets very irregular, and the waves meet and they push you up and down, and It's very uncomfortable, situation.
When you're running on autopilot, Bill, what do you set the autopilot to?
Autopilot,
Bearing or-
it's set to a magnet. It's steering to a magnetic compass. You can buy equipment that will make it so you sail a relative angle to the wind.
Yeah.
But I didn't make that investment, so I didn't have that. Just magnetic compass, yeah. So what happened was these lows, and you can see this is a screenshot of a weather map that we download daily. And it shows this is a low pressure area, and here's where we started from. This is Vava'v, Tonga. Here's our destination, Raivavae, and our course pretty much followed this red line. We dove south to get onto the low pressure area, then turned east. Here's our low that we're riding on. The lows normally come off the continent here and move at about 500 miles per day, much faster than we can sail, so they outrun us. But when our low got south of us, it wasn't forecast, but it slowed down. It started moving 150 miles a day. So we managed to stay with it for 11 days, and we sailed all the way to Raivavae, downwind the whole way. Unheard of for that to happen. But if we didn't have the tools, if we didn't have these forecasting tools, we wouldn't have known when to leave Vava'v, how far south we had to go, and we wouldn't have been able to take advantage of this. So Mac titled my talk here "Men Against the Sea" or "Man Against the Sea," but it's working with the tools we had, working with the conditions to be successful. So that's why it worked out that we managed to make it very quickly. We met a guy in Tonga who delivers boats for a living, and he once did a trip from Tonga to Tahiti, which isn't even as far as we went. It took him 40 days to get there. So we were very fortunate. This is what we use for all of our navigation and communications, just an old hand-me-down laptop, a $500 sat phone that Alan Lloyd gave us before our 2011 cruise, plugs into the laptop so we can upload and download emails with weather files attached to it, and in the back of the laptop is an $18 GPS. It looks like a thumb drive. It plugs in. That's all we've ever used for navigation for 2 trips to the South Pacific. So very, very effective, very inexpensive, very reliable.
Do you have alternates, like if this one gets wet, you have another one?
There's 5, well, yeah, I had another thumb drive GPS because for $18, what the heck, you're going to buy a bunch of them. But we had 5 GPSs on the boat because they're so cheap now. No one carries sextants anymore, that kind of stuff. You just take a bunch of spare GPSs. How many of you have heard of Raivavae before? Yeah, not many. I mean, as cruising sailors, we're always looking for the undiscovered tropical paradise, and that would be Raivavae. This is a Google satellite photo of Raivavae. Looks very much like Bora Bora. It's probably the island most similar to Bora Bora in the world. It's got a high basaltic central island, a navigable lagoon around that island, and then all enclosed within a barrier reef with a bunch of motus on it. Just a beautiful spot. It's about 400 miles south of Tahiti, part of French Polynesia. The difference is there's 800 people there. We found one other English speaker. I imagine there's maybe a few more, but we didn't find them. Not a single hotel, not a single restaurant, not a single tourist. So just a beautiful, beautiful spot.
Is that an airstrip?
That is an airstrip. They built an airstrip, and they have scheduled weekly flights, Air Tahiti, in from Papeete, but they cancel them most of the time because nobody's flying in or out of Raivavae. So,
Policeman, right?
2 gendarmes, yeah, on the island. So, yeah.
Important starboard watches.
Right. And here's a video I put together of our stay on Raivavae. Here comes Mr. Dyer on our bike ride around the island. Here we're at the very south end of Raivavae. And Mokopea sailing around Raivavae Island. What a spot. Here we are on the beach at the swimming pool Motu, Raivavae. We're burning our garbage here because there's no disposal here in Raivavae. Beautiful Motu. Doesn't look like anybody lives here. I know it's privately owned, but doesn't look like anyone lives here. Oh, having a beer. Completed SOP1. Look at this Motu. Perfect uninhabited beach, no footprints, nothing. Beautiful lagoon. Here's the transition between the windward side of the Motu, all coral rubble, and the leeward side of the Motu, beautiful sand beach. Looks like some fishermen had set up a camp there or something. And looking into the lagoon at Raivavae. Beautiful, the lagoon. Look at this. And right in here, I don't know if you can see, right, the fish are gone. There were a bunch of fish right in front of Matt here a minute ago. I just cannot get over the beauty of this place. So beautiful. So empty.
Carry those bikes in the boat, right?
Yeah, we have folding bikes that I bought 30 years ago. They're still using them.
So that's not volcanic.
That is volcanic. The center is volcanic. It's going through the typical life cycle of a basaltic island in the tropics. A high island, and as it erodes away, that reef that starts to grow around its edge keeps growing, and that's all that's left after a while. So this is kind of halfway through it.
On Sunday.
The beaches are very clean. They don't have a lot of rubbish,
Well, yeah, because they're in the South Pacific. Most of humanity lives up in the northern hemisphere, right? So there's not a lot of junk down there. We spent 24 hours on the windward side of Raivavae here, anchored in this Motu and sailing around. In 24 hours, we never saw another human being. So, just
or a piece of trash.
Or a piece of trash, yeah. Just stunningly beautiful spot.
You see many shellfish in a situation like that. There's not a lot of rocks, but I'm just saying about shells amongst the reefs of that,
Yeah, there's quite a bit of shells there. We didn't do a lot of shelling. It's 24 degrees south is where Raivavae is. So we're down there during the winter. So it's farther south than Kauai is north. So it was pretty chilly. So we didn't get in the water. I'm sure there's lots of shells there. But summertime it would be very pleasant. But of course that's hurricane season, so we don't want to be down there at that time. But it was just a beautiful spot.
It's goodbye to Raivavae. It's about 5 p.m. on the 2nd of September, and we are sailing away from Raivavae, headed for Morel. It was a good trip, wasn't it, Mr. Dyer?
Yes, sir. Awesome.
Awesome.
I
Raivavae.
recommend it to anybody.
Beautiful place, Raivavae. We will miss it, and if you can get here, that's right, very hard to get here. Aloha no, Raivavae. And here we go, off to Tahiti.
So we sailed to Tahiti 2 days away, and my buddy Matt flew out, and Lori flew in, and Lori and I had 3 weeks to revisit our favorite spots from our 2011 cruise, and here she is having her afternoon hinano. My buddy Dave Shafer was supposed to join me 28 years ago when I was down in Bora Bora. He was working for Dudley Pratt at the time at Hawaiian Electric Industries. He was the chief of corporate development, and they were right in the middle of buying a Hawaiian Tug and Barge or Young Brothers or whatever it was they bought back then. So at the last minute, Dudley told David he couldn't come down on the trip. So this was a do-over. David flew down to Huahine and met us for a week. Lori flew out the next day, and David and I spent a week having a good time. My daughter Kendra also flew down and joined me for a week. Here she is on the pier at Bloody Mary's restaurant in Bora Bora. And after about a month and a half in French Polynesia, another pal flew down, Tony Hoff flew down and joined me, and this is a video of our sail home.
Mighty Mokopea, just after 8 a.m., 28th of October, 2014, departing Bora Bora, heading for Hilo. See Bora Bora fading in the distance back there. Winds out of the north, unfortunately, but look at this day, it's gorgeous. It's supposed to come around to the east tomorrow. We may get here to where we can lay Bora, flop onto port, and do some easting. But boy, look at this weather. Got Tony on the bow there. The
master is at work at his computer station creating his infamous blog that's now up to over 11,000 views. Oh, right on.
Right arm.
Right arm. Might as well go on a tour while we're at it. This is the captain's cabin. All nice and neat. What? It's all nice and neat and organized. Nav station. This is a companionway up here, so we're on the port side. Inline galley, very efficient. And up into the dark and foreboding forepeak. Lord knows what lurks up in here. And over on the starboard side, just aft, is the beautiful dinette, which hasn't really gotten used yet on this trip because we always eat out in the cockpit. After the dinette is the spacious and comfortable head. And Tony's messed up stateroom back here underneath the cockpit. Nice trade wind sailing at the moment. We're in day 6.
Got ourselves a little bit of breeze here. About 10 south. Was hardly any wind, and all of a sudden the breeze came up out of the squall. I think we're just going into the Equatorial Counter-Current. Look at this. Guys, look at this. Look at this current line here. Look at this current line. Isn't that amazing? Here we are. We're at 3 degrees. Look, whoa, it just picked the boat up and it's throwing us around. Look at this. We're at 3 degrees north latitude. Wow. That is a current line of all current lines. It's day 11. Got a fish line out. Mokopea is charging along. We're heading due north. You can see that squally weather. Big squalls everywhere. It's the end of day 13. It's going to be a gorgeous sunrise. We're at just about 12 degrees north of the equator, under power. It's day 17 on the mighty Mokopea, heading for Hilo. Wind has come aft. We're zipping along. Look how flat these seas are. We're in a southerly breeze that's going to be shifting to the southwest. There's a low passing to the north of us. And the Mokopea is blazing along. Heading for Hilo. You're not going to see this very often. Port tack running, heading north here south of the Big Island. Very rare indeed.
So, well, it's just two, either it's just an area where there's two currents meet, or there's an area of current next to an area of no current, but differential water movement, essentially. So it looked like, the edge of a river, like crossing into the Gulf Stream or something like that. But we were 600 miles from the nearest land, out there just north of the equator. Very surprising to see something like that out there. If it was a rougher day, we might not have seen it. But
The currents were going in the same direction?
well, I think what we were doing, we were sailing through the edge of, there's a current that runs from west to east, right there near the equator, called the Equatorial Counter-Current. And normally in the Pacific, the surface current goes the same direction as the wind because it's pushed by the wind. It goes about 1 knot from east to west because the prevailing wind is from east to west. But right there at the equator, or in the doldrums, there's a very strong current of about 2 or 3 knots that moves from west to east. And sailing ships that are trying to work their way east will often jump into that equatorial countercurrent and ride it to the east. And I think we were on the edge of that equatorial countercurrent. So it was very well-defined edge to that current.
A 35-foot Manitou turned out to be a pretty good selection.
Well, the boat that we have, it's like a $65,000 sailboat. It's cheaper than a lot of people's cars, and it was designed for charter boat cruising, and it started its life as a charter boat cruiser in Raiatea in Tahiti, and a friend of mine brought it up to Hawaii, and I bought it from him. It's not the most seaworthy boat in the world, but if you stay in the tropics, and stay away from hurricane season, you can go just about anywhere with relative safety. The thing that was most remarkable about the cruise, though, was the weather, and we did more than 70% of the cruise was downwind. And when you start and end in the same spot and never leave the tropics, to go downwind the whole way is kind of a head scratcher as to how you get away with that. But I attribute it to our weather forecasting tools and our ability to time our departures and route ourselves once we did depart to stay in favorable weather. You never could have done that 30 or 40 years ago. The forecasts weren't that accurate and they weren't that complete. Most of the world didn't have good weather forecasts, but now we have the weather satellites, and the weather models have been developed to the point where even a week out they're remarkably accurate. So, that was probably the most remarkable thing about the cruise. So anyway, after getting back to Hilo, a couple days there, we sailed home, and 30 hours later we're back in Kaneohe Yacht Club, and so ends the voyage of the mighty Mokopea. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Well, thank you very much for that very interesting talk. Looks like you had a lot of fun.
Certainly was.
You need to stand up and receive your certificate of appreciation. Okay, and before we adjourn, we want to, I think Jeffrey wants to say goodbye. And he's been a long time member, past president at least once of the club. Very active in the AIA and everything else, and I think we want to, send him off with a big aloha. So, thank you, Jeffrey, and I'll let you speech.
Now is the hour when I must say goodbye. Soon I'll be flying far across the sea. While I'm away, oh please remember me, and when I return, I'll find you waiting here. Goodbye, everybody.
I heard you do that for the Maori.
Anyway, thank you, Jeffrey. You will sorely be missed. Please come back and visit us often.
Thanks, Bill. Jeffrey, I haven't been around this year, but what are your plans? I just missed out on what you're doing.
Well, I have a 10-year-old grandson, and they only come out here twice a year, and so I think it's time to go. Then I have two sons that live in Berkeley, California, and then my son Robin in Long Beach. But the place I'm going to is Belmont Shore, which is just like Kailua. I'll be just 2 blocks from the beach. When I go to the beach, I can see the Queen Mary, and so it will be. And I also will be probably trying to finish up my memoirs. So it's fun writing the memoirs when you're getting on there, because most of the people you're writing about are gone already and they can't sue you. So
Jeffrey, the man of the legend.
All right, thank you. And we're going to wait. It's 1 o'clock exactly. Oh, cut it close. 113 years of ending at 1. Have a great weekend, all. Thank you.